Jiho stood in the main hall of the Galactic Archive Station, staring up at the massive crystal dome above his head. Through it, he could see the stars spinning slowly as the station orbited the neutral moon. He had dreamed of this moment for years. As a human archaeologist, getting assigned to this place was the biggest achievement of his career. The archive held artifacts from 100 different alien species, some older than human civilization itself. "You must be the human they sent." The voice came from behind him, sharp and dismissive. Jiho turned to see a tall alien woman approaching. She had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the station's lights, and her eyes were completely black without any visible whites. Her features were elegant but cold. She wore formal robes marked with symbols he recognized as Valith script. "I'm Jiho. The Cultural Exchange Program assigned me here for 6 months. I'm looking forward to working with your collection." The alien woman looked him up and down with an expression that made him feel like an insect under examination. "I am Rael. My mother is the head curator. She assigned me to show you around since she is too busy with actual important work." She turned without waiting for his response. "Try to keep up, human." Jiho followed her through the corridors, his jaw tight. He had dealt with prejudice before. Many of the older alien species looked down on humanity. Humans had only joined galactic society 50 years ago. To species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years, humans were newcomers, children playing at being adults. Rael led him past displays of ancient weapons, crystallized art pieces, and technological devices he could not begin to understand. She spoke in a bored tone, barely glancing at him as she recited facts about each exhibit. When Jiho asked questions, she answered with the bare minimum of words. "Your species has only been in space for 5 decades, Rael said as they walked. "The youngest item in this room is 3,000 years old. Do you understand the difference?" "I understand that age doesn't always equal wisdom," Jiho replied quietly. Rael stopped and turned to face him, her black eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" "Nothing. Please continue the tour." She studied him for a long moment, then made a sound that might have been a laugh or a scoff. "At least you have some spirit. Most humans who come here are too intimidated to speak back." She resumed walking. "Come. I will show you our pride." They entered a new section of the archive. The lighting here was different, softer, and more reverent. The room was circular with a high ceiling. In the center, mounted on a raised platform surrounded by energy barriers, stood a suit of armor. Jiho approached slowly, his eyes wide. The armor was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with blue light. The design was sleek, but clearly built for war. Blade-like protrusions extended from the shoulders and forearms. The helmet had no visible eye openings, just a smooth surface that reflected his face back at him. "This is Valith war armor from the Epic Wars," Rael said, and for the first time, her voice carried real emotion. Pride. 50,000 years old. It was worn by our greatest champions when my people fought to unite this sector of space. Only those of royal blood could wear such armor. It would bond with the warrior's mind, becoming an extension of their body. "It's incredible," Jiho admitted. He moved closer to the barrier, studying the intricate patterns. "The craftsmanship is beyond anything I've seen." "Of course it is." Rael stepped up beside him. "Your species was still learning to make fire when this was forged." She tilted her head, studying him. "The armor has a neural interface. It can sense the presence of those worthy to wear it. Would you like to know what it senses from you?" Jiho glanced at her. There was a mocking smile on her face. "What?" "Nothing." Rael's smile widened. "It senses nothing from you at all. You are so beneath its recognition that it treats you like empty air." Anger flickered in Jiho's chest. He had been patient all day, swallowing his pride, accepting her insults. But this was too much. Really? How can you tell? Rael gestured, and the energy barrier dissolved. Because if you were worthy, you could touch it. But you are not Valith, you are not royal, you are barely more than a child species playing with technology you found in the dirt. She stepped closer to the armor and placed her hand on the chest plate. Nothing happened. See? Even I cannot activate it. I am not of direct royal lineage, but I can at least touch it without the armor rejecting me. Jiho looked at the armor, then at Rael's smug expression. Every instinct told him to walk away, to not take the bait. But he was tired. Tired of the condescension. Tired of being treated like he did not belong. Tired of species like the Valith, acting as if humans had nothing to offer. Fine, he said. Let me try. Rael blinked in surprise, then laughed. You cannot be serious. You said I could touch it without being rejected. Let me see for myself. Jiho stepped toward the platform. Wait! Rael's amusement faded slightly. I was joking. The armor is sacred. Humans should not. You just had your hand on it, Jiho interrupted. If you can touch it, why can't I? He climbed the steps to the platform before she could stop him. Up close, the armor seemed even larger. Jiho was not a small man, but the armor had been made for warriors who stood taller than any human. He reached out slowly, his heart pounding. His fingers were inches from the chest plate. This is foolish, Rael said behind him, though she made no move to stop him. Nothing will happen except you will embarrass yourself. Jiho's fingers touched the cold metal. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then light exploded across the armor's surface. The symbols that had been glowing faintly suddenly blazed with brilliant white light. The entire room flooded with brightness. Jiho tried to pull his hand back, but he could not move. His arm was locked in place. The light spread from where he touched, racing across every surface of the armor like lightning through water. Rael stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock. What is happening? Jiho could not answer. Pain shot through his arm, up his shoulder, into his head. But it was not just pain. Information flooded his mind. Images, sounds, memories that were not his own. He saw battles fought on worlds he had never heard of. He saw soldiers in armor like this standing against terrible enemies. He saw a final desperate stand against something vast and dark. The armor moved. Metal flowed like liquid, wrapping around Jiho's arm. He shouted in alarm, trying to pull away, but the armor held him tight. Pieces lifted from the platform, drawn to him like magnets. The chest plate opened and closed around his torso. The leg pieces attached themselves to his limbs. The helmet rose into the air. "Stop it!" Rael screamed. "Someone help!" Alarms began blaring throughout the archive. Footsteps thundered in the corridors outside as guards rushed toward them. The helmet descended onto Jiho's head and his world went dark. Then a voice spoke in his mind, ancient and patient. Inheritor recognized. Welcome. Child of the old blood. Jiho could not breathe. The armor covered him completely, sealed tight against his skin. He tried to move, but his body would not respond. Panic surged through him. He was trapped inside a 50,000-year-old artifact that was doing something to him, something that felt like it was rewriting his brain. Outside the armor, he heard chaos. Footsteps, shouting, the sound of weapons powering up. But it all seemed distant, as if he were underwater. "Get it off him!" That was Rael's voice, high with fear. "We are trying, honored one." A deeper voice, male, strained with effort. "It will not respond to any commands." Jiho felt hands on the armor, trying to pry it open. Nothing happened. The armor might as well have been part of his body now, which he realized with growing horror it was becoming. Then something changed. his lungs filled with air, not because he gasped, but because the armor forced air into him. His heart, which had been racing with panic, slowed to a steady rhythm. Calm washed over him, and he knew it was not his own calm. The armor was controlling his body's responses. "Stop fighting," the voice in his mind said again. It spoke in a language he did not recognize, but somehow he understood every word. "This process is necessary. You will not be harmed." "What are you?" Jiho thought the words rather than speaking them. "I am the Aegis. I am the shield of the old ones. I am the last defense of a dead people." Before Jiho could respond, the armor suddenly released him. Not completely, but enough that he could move again. The helmet pulled back from his face, flowing like liquid metal to reform around his collar. Light flooded in, and he gasped, looking around. He stood in the center of the archive room, but now he was taller. The armor had extended his height by at least a foot. He looked down at his hands and saw they were encased in black metal that shifted and moved as he flexed his fingers. The sensation was strange. He could feel through the armor as if it were his own skin. Around him, a dozen Valith guards stood in a circle, weapons aimed at him. The weapons glowed with energy that made the air shimmer. Behind them, Rael stood with her hand over her mouth, her black eyes wide with shock and fear. "Do not move, human." The voice came from a tall Valith male who stepped through the circle of guards. He wore military armor, more modern but less impressive than what Jiho now wore. His face was scarred, and his expression was pure fury. "I am Commander Tav. You will surrender that armor immediately." Jiho raised his hands slowly, trying to look non-threatening. "I don't know how. It won't come off. I didn't mean for this to happen." "Lies." Commander Tav's hand went to his weapon. "You are a thief. You have stolen sacred Valith heritage." "Uncle, wait!" Rael pushed through the guards to stand between Jiho and the commander. "He is telling the truth. I saw it. He touched the armor and it activated. This has never happened before. Then he has used some human trick to bypass the armor's defenses." Commander Tav glared at Jiho with pure hatred. "The armor is coded to respond only to royal Valith blood. No other species should be able to activate it." "That is not entirely accurate, Commander." Everyone turned. An old Valith female entered the room, moving slowly with the aid of a walking staff. She was ancient, her skin faded to a pale gray, and her eyes clouded with age. But she carried herself with authority that made even Commander Tav step back. "Elder Kess," Rael breathed. "What are you doing here?" "The alarm system is connected to my chambers. When an epoch artifact activates, I am notified immediately." The old woman approached Jiho, studying him with those cloudy eyes. "Fascinating. I never thought I would see this in my lifetime." "See what?" Jiho asked. "The armor recognizing someone outside our species." Elder Kess reached out and touched the armor on Jiho's arm. Her fingers traced the glowing symbols. "These markings, they have changed. This text was not here before." Jiho looked down. She was right. New symbols had appeared, flowing across the armor's surface like water. They glowed brighter than the old markings. "What do they say?" Commander Tav demanded. "They say inheritor recognized." Elder Kess looked up at Jiho. "Tell me, young human, what is your full name and lineage?" "My name is Jiho. I am from Earth, from Korea. My family has lived in the same region for thousands of years, as far back as our records go. And have you ever been tested for genetic markers? Anomalies in your DNA?" Jiho shook his head. "No. I mean, I had standard medical scans, but nothing unusual showed up. We need to test him properly." A new voice joined the conversation. A human woman pushed through the guards carrying a medical scanner. She was younger than Jiho, with short hair and sharp eyes. "Hi, I'm Hyun. I'm an engineer assigned to the human delegation here. I came as soon as I heard what happened. You cannot be here, Commander Tav said. This is a Valith matter. It is a matter involving my friend wearing your armor, Hyun shot back. That makes it my business, too. She approached Jiho, scanning him with her device. Jiho, how do you feel? Any pain? Dizziness? I feel strange. Jiho tried to find words for what he was experiencing. The armor is in my head, not controlling me, but connected. I can feel it thinking. Thinking? Hyun's eyes widened. The armor has an AI? All Epoch armor had artificial intelligence, Elder Kess explained. They were designed to bond with a warrior and enhance their abilities. But these AI were programmed to accept only specific genetic codes. They were locked to the royal bloodline. Unless, Hyun said slowly, looking at her scanner, the genetic code it is looking for is not actually Valith. She turned the scanner so Elder Kess could see. Look at this. Jiho's DNA has markers I have never seen before. They are definitely human, but there is something else there. Something dormant. That is impossible. Commander Tav moved closer. Humans are a young species. You have no ancient lineage. Actually, Elder Kess said quietly, there is a theory, a forbidden theory that most of my people refuse to accept. She looked at the commander. What if the armor was never truly ours to begin with? Silence fell over the room. What are you saying? Rael asked. I am saying that according to very old, very suppressed texts, the Valith did not create the Epoch armor. We found it. Elder Kess tapped her staff on the ground. We found it in ruins left by another species. A species that existed before us, before any of the current galactic powers. The progenitors, Jiho whispered. The word came from the armor's memory, flowing into his mind. Everyone stared at him. How do you know that name? Elder Kess demanded. The armor told me. Jiho closed his eyes, trying to make sense of the flood of information. They were ancient. They seeded life across the galaxy. They created all of us. Madness, Commander Tav spat. Is it? Hyun was typing rapidly on her scanner. I am looking at genetic data that suggests humans and Valith share common ancestry if you go back far enough. Way further back than should be possible. If the progenitors created both our species, Rael said slowly, then Jiho might carry genetic markers that the armor recognizes. This is not possible, Commander Tav insisted, but his voice lacked conviction now. Jiho felt the armor shift around him. It was adapting, changing to fit his body better. The weight that had felt crushing at first was now comfortable, natural. And in his mind, the voice of the Aegis spoke again. The old blood flows in you, child. Weak, but present. You are the first in 50,000 years to carry it strongly enough for me to recognize. What does that mean? Jiho asked aloud. Before the Aegis could answer, every alarm in the station began shrieking at once. Hyun's scanner erupted with warnings. Her face went pale. We have a problem. Multiple ships just appeared at the edge of the system. Unknown design. They are not responding to hails. Commander Tav touched his communication device. Report! A panicked voice crackled through. Commander, the unknown ships are moving toward the station. Their energy signatures are off the scale. They are not like anything in our database. Elder Kess grabbed Jiho's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. What have you done? The armor's awakening has sent a signal. A signal to what? Jiho asked. The Aegis answered in his mind, and its voice was grim. To those who destroyed my creators, the Devourers have found us. The archive station shook. Not from weapons fire, not yet, but from the emergency engines firing as the station tried to move away from the approaching ships. Jiho grabbed a support column to steady himself, the armor automatically adjusting his balance. Everyone to the command center, Now! Commander Tav barked orders at his guards. They moved quickly, weapons still ready, surrounding Jiho as if he might explode at any moment. As they rushed through the corridors, Hyun stayed close to Jiho's side. "Can you take the armor off?" she whispered. "I don't think so. It feels like it is part of me now." Jiho looked at his hands, watching the metal shift and flow across his fingers. "I don't even know if I want to. The things it is showing me, Hyun, the memories. There was a war, a huge one." "Save the history lesson for later," Rael said sharply from his other side. "Right now, we need to figure out what those ships want and why they appeared the moment you activated that armor." They reached the command center, a circular room filled with holographic displays and Valith officers working frantically at their stations. In the center of the room, a large hologram showed the space around the station. 3 ships hung in the dark, and Jiho felt his blood run cold at the sight of them. They were wrong. That was the only way his mind could process it. The ships were enormous, easily 10 times the size of the archive station. Their design was geometric and harsh, all sharp angles and dark metal. But it was not their appearance that disturbed him. It was the way they seemed to absorb light, creating patches of deeper darkness in space around them. "What are they?" Rael asked, moving to stand beside her uncle. "We do not know," Commander Tav replied. "They are not in any database. The energy readings suggest technology far beyond anything we understand." He turned to Jiho. "And they appeared exactly 1 hour after the armor activated. That cannot be coincidence." "It is not," Elder Kess said. She had moved to a console and was pulling up old files, her fingers moving across the controls with surprising speed. "I have spent my life studying the Epoch period. There are texts, fragments of texts really, that mention something called the Devourers. I always thought they were metaphorical. Stories meant to frighten children." "What do the stories say?" Hyun asked. Her scanner pointed at the hologram, trying to analyze the ships. "They say the Devourers destroyed the progenitors. They say the Devourers were machines created to cleanse the galaxy of a great plague, but they evolved beyond their programming. They began to see all life as a threat." Elder Kess pulled up a projection showing ancient Valith script. "The progenitors fought them for 10,000 years and lost. Before they fell, they created the Epoch armor as a last weapon. They seeded their genetic code into primitive species across the galaxy, hoping that one day their children might finish what they could not." Jiho felt the weight of those words settle over him. "So humans and Valith, all of us, we are descendants of these progenitors?" "Not direct descendants. More like genetic experiments. The progenitors took the life that already existed and modified it, leaving markers in our DNA that would activate under certain conditions." Elder Kess looked at him with those cloudy eyes. "You carry those markers more strongly than anyone else we have found. The armor recognized you as one of its creator's children." "This is insane," Rael muttered. "Our entire history. Everything we thought we knew about our origins was a lie," Elder Kess finished. "Or at least incomplete. The Valith found the armor and claimed it as our own creation because we could not accept that we were not the oldest, not the first." An alarm blared. One of the officers called out, "Commander, the ships are moving. They will be in weapons range in 10 minutes. "All stations prepare for defensive action," Commander Tav ordered. He looked at Jiho. "Can that armor help us fight them?" "I do not know. Maybe." Jiho closed his eyes, trying to communicate with the Aegis. "What can you do against the Devourers?" The response came immediately. "I was designed to fight them, but I am only one suit of armor. The progenitors created thousands of us. All were lost in the final battles." "Are there more? Other suits of armor hidden somewhere?" "No, I am the last." Jiho opened his eyes and repeated what the Aegis had told him. The hope he saw die in Commander Tav's face made his stomach twist. "Then we evacuate," the commander said. "We cannot defend against ships of that size with what we have here." "No." Elder Kess stepped forward. "If we run, they will follow. The Devourers are drawn to the armor's signal. Wherever Jiho goes, they will pursue. Then we remove the armor." Commander Tav reached for his weapon. "You cannot," Hyan said quickly, putting herself between Jiho and the commander. "The armor has integrated with his nervous system. Trying to remove it now would kill him." "Better one human dies than an entire station," Commander Tav said coldly. "Uncle," Rael grabbed his arm. "We are not murderers. We are survivors." Commander Tav pulled free from her grip, "and sometimes survival requires hard choices." Another woman entered the command center, moving with calm authority despite the chaos. She wore a Veilith diplomatic uniform, her bearing suggesting high rank. "Commander Tav, I have been briefed on the situation. I am Ambassador Nira. The Council has asked me to assess what is happening here." "Ambassador." Commander Tav nodded to her. "As you can see, we have a crisis. This human has activated a weapon that has drawn hostile forces to our position." "Fascinating." Ambassador Nira approached Jiho, studying him with interest rather than fear. "The legendary armor of the epoch. I never thought it was more than a ceremonial relic." She walked around him, examining the armor from all angles. "If what Elder Kess says is true, then this changes everything we know about galactic history." "History will not matter if those ships destroy us," Commander Tav said impatiently. "On the contrary, Commander, history is the key to our survival." Ambassador Nira gestured at the hologram. "If these ships are truly the Devourers from legend, then conventional weapons will be useless against them. But the armor was designed specifically to fight them." "One suit of armor against 3 massive warships?" Rael shook her head. "That is suicide." "Perhaps, or perhaps the armor is more capable than we realize." Ambassador Nira turned to Jiho. "Young human, can you access the armor's full capabilities?" Jiho concentrated, reaching into the connection he shared with the Aegis. Information flooded back, overwhelming in its complexity. "The armor has weapons, energy projection, kinetic shields, some kind of spatial manipulation, but it says I am not ready. My body has not fully adapted yet." "How long will that take?" Ambassador Nira asked. "Days, maybe weeks. The armor is rewriting my neural pathways, strengthening my muscles and bones to handle the stress of combat. If I try to use full power now, it will kill me." "We do not have days." Commander Tav slammed his fist on the console. "The ships will be here in minutes." The lights in the command center suddenly flickered. Then every display went dark for a moment before coming back online. When they did, the image had changed. The 3 Devourer ships were closer now, much closer than they should have been. "They jumped," one of the officers said, voice shaking. "They crossed half the system in an instant." "How is that possible?" Hyun breathed. "It is not," Commander Tav said. "No ship can move that fast." "They are not ships in the traditional sense." Elder Kess pointed at the displays showing energy readings. "Look at those signatures. They are not using fuel or engines. They are manipulating space itself." Another alarm. The officer's voice rose in panic. "Sir, they are charging weapons. Multiple energy buildups detected across all 3 vessels." Everyone in the command center fell silent, watching the hologram. Jiho felt the armor tighten around him, responding to his fear. "There is another option," the Aegis said in his mind. "What?" "I can shield the station, but it will require significant power. You will feel pain." "Do it," Jiho said aloud. "Do what?" Rael asked. Jiho did not answer. He stepped into the center of the command center and spread his arms. The armor responded instantly. Light erupted from his body, bright enough to make everyone shield their eyes. Energy poured out of him, flowing through the armor and expanding outward. Through the viewports, they could see it happening. A dome of shimmering light was growing from the station, spreading out in all directions. It looked like a bubble made of stars. Jiho gritted his teeth. The Aegis had not been lying about the pain. It felt like his blood was boiling, like every nerve in his body was on fire. But he held on, forcing himself to stay conscious, to keep the shield active. The Devourers fired. 3 beams of dark energy lanced through space, striking the shield. The impact sent shock waves through the station. Equipment sparked and exploded. Officers were thrown to the ground. But the shield held. Jiho screamed. He could not help it. The pain was beyond anything he had experienced. He felt Hyun grab his arm, heard her shouting his name, but he could not respond. All his focus was on maintaining the shield. The second volley came, then a third. Each impact drove Jiho to his knees. Blood ran from his nose, his vision blurred. Then, as suddenly as it started, the attack stopped. The Devourer ships hung in space, silent and dark. The shield flickered and died. Jiho collapsed, the armor the only thing keeping him upright. "Jiho!" Hyun was beside him, scanner out. "His vitals are dropping. We need medical now." But Jiho barely heard her. In his mind, the Aegis spoke one last time before he lost consciousness. "They are testing us. They will return with greater force. You must be ready." Jiho woke in a medical bay, his head pounding and his body aching in ways he had never felt before. The armor was still on him, but it had retracted partially, exposing his arms and chest. Medical sensors were attached to his skin, and he could hear the steady beep of monitoring equipment. "You are awake." Rael sat in a chair beside his bed. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her black eyes. "You have been unconscious for 6 hours. The station?" Jiho's voice came out rough. "Still intact. The Devourer ships retreated after their attack. They are holding position at the edge of the system." Rael stood and poured water from a pitcher, handing him the cup. "You saved us. That shield you created absorbed their weapons fire. Without it, we would all be dead." Jiho drank gratefully. The cool water helped clear his head. "Where is Hyun?" "Your friend is with our engineers, trying to understand the energy readings from the attack." Rael sat back down. "Jiho, I need to apologize to you." He looked at her in surprise. "When you arrived here, I treated you with disrespect. I thought humans were primitive, unworthy of standing beside species like mine. I made you touch the armor as a joke, to humiliate you." Rael's voice was quiet. "I never imagined this would happen. And now you are suffering because of my arrogance." "It is not your fault," Jiho said. "You could not have known what the armor would do. But I could have treated you with basic dignity. I could have seen you as a person rather than an inferior being." Rael met his eyes. "My people pride themselves on being advanced, civilized. But what is civilization worth if we cannot show kindness to those we consider lesser?" Before Jiho could respond, the door to the medical bay slid open. Commander Tav entered, followed by several other people. Jiho recognized Ambassador Nira and Elder Kess. But there were 2 newcomers as well. One was a human male, tall and muscular, wearing a military uniform. The other was a Valith warrior, his armor marked with symbols indicating high rank. Both men radiated authority and controlled violence. "This is Officer Kyung," Commander Tav said, gesturing to the human. "He commands the human military escort assigned to this sector, and this is Warrior Thex, one of our finest combat specialists." Kyung approached the bed, studying Jiho with sharp eyes. "I have been briefed on the situation. You activated ancient armor and drew hostile forces to this location. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir." Jiho sat up straighter despite his aching body. "And you used that armor to defend the station?" "I did what the armor told me I could do." Kyung glanced at Commander Tav. The Devourer ships have not left the system. Our long-range sensors detect them powering up again. Whatever they hit us with before was just a test. The real attack is coming. How long do we have? Rail asked. Hours, maybe a day at most. Kyung turned back to Jiho. Can you do that shield trick again? I do not know. Maybe, but it almost killed me last time. Almost is better than definitely, which is what will happen if those ships attack at full power. Kyung's expression was hard. I have a responsibility to protect human interests in this sector. That includes you. But it also includes the other humans on this station and nearby colonies. What are you suggesting? Jiho asked, though he was afraid he already knew. I am suggesting we use you as a weapon. You train with the armor, learn to control its power, and when the Devourers attack again, you fight them. Kyung crossed his arms. Unless you have a better idea. The boy is not a soldier, Elder Kess said sharply. He is an archaeologist. You cannot simply conscript him into service. With respect, Elder, we are facing an existential threat, Ambassador Nira said. Normal rules do not apply. If Jiho is the only one who can use the armor, then he must use it for the defense of all. And if I refuse? Jiho asked quietly. Silence filled the room. Warrior Thex was the one who answered, his voice deep and rough. Then we all die. You, us, everyone on this station. And when the Devourers move on to inhabited worlds, millions more will die. Is that what you want? Of course not. Jiho looked down at his hands, at the black metal that covered them. But I am not a fighter. I study the past. I do not know how to kill. The armor does. Hyun entered the room, tablet in hand. She looked worried. I have been analyzing its structure. The Aegis is not just a defensive system. It is a complete weapons platform. It has protocols for combat, strategies for defeating the Devourers. All that knowledge is in your head now, Jiho. You just need to access it. Accessing knowledge and using it are different things, Jiho said, which is why you will train. Warrior Thex stepped forward. I will teach you combat basics. The armor will handle the advanced techniques, but you need to understand fundamentals. Fighting is not just about strength. It is about discipline, control, and the will to do what must be done. Jiho wanted to refuse. He wanted to tell them he was not cut out for this, that they should find someone else. But as he looked around the room at the faces watching him, he realized there was no one else. The armor had chosen him, for better or worse. How much time do I have to train? He asked. Not enough, Kyung said, but we work with what we have. Over the next hours, Jiho learned what it meant to push beyond human limits. Warrior Thex took him to a training room and immediately began drilling him on basic movements. Stance, balance, how to throw a punch without breaking his own hand. The armor helped, adjusting his posture, guiding his movements, but it could not override his inexperience. Jiho fell more times than he could count. Warrior Thex showed no mercy, striking him again and again, teaching him through pain. You are soft, the Valith warrior said after knocking Jiho down for the 10th time. Humans are weaker than Valith physically, but even accounting for that, you fight like a child. I told you I am not a fighter, Jiho said, climbing back to his feet. Everyone is a fighter when the alternative is death. Warrior Thex circled him. The armor makes you strong, but strength without skill is useless. Again. They continued for hours. Jiho's body screamed in protest, but the armor kept him going, repairing minor injuries, reducing fatigue. Slowly, painfully, he began to improve. His movements became smoother. His strikes started to land. In another part of the station, Hyun worked with Valith engineers to analyze the Devourer ships. She barely slept, running simulation after simulation, trying to understand the technology they were facing. It is wrong, she told Elder Kess during one of the rare moments she took a break. Their energy signatures. They do not follow normal physics. It is like they exist partially in another dimension. The old texts mention something similar, Elder Kess said. They called it shadow space, a realm between reality and void. Can we fight something that exists in multiple dimensions? Hyun asked. The progenitors did. Barely. And they had thousands of suits of armor like the one Jiho wears. Elder Kess looked tired. We have one. And a human who has worn it for less than a day. Meanwhile, across known space, word of the Devourer appearance spread. Governments mobilized their fleets. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found common ground in the face of a greater threat. War fleets began jumping into the system, dozens of ships appearing every hour. Commander Tav coordinated the arrivals, establishing a defensive perimeter around the archive station. Ambassador Nira worked with diplomatic corps from a dozen species, trying to maintain order as fear and panic threatened to tear apart the fragile alliance. This is unprecedented, she told Commander Tav as they watched ships take position on the tactical displays. I have never seen so many species working together. They are not working together, Commander Tav replied grimly. They are hiding behind each other, hoping someone else will bear the cost of fighting. Cynic. Realist. In the medical bay, Rael stayed by the monitors, tracking Jiho's vital signs, even when he was not there. She watched the numbers fluctuate wildly as he trained, the armor pushing his body to its absolute limits, and then beyond. He will burn out, she told Hyun during one of her visits. I know, Hyun said quietly. But what choice do we have? The Devourers are not going to give us time for a proper training program. It is not fair. He came here to study artifacts, not become one. Life is rarely fair. Hyun looked at her scanner. But Jiho is adapting faster than I expected. The armor is rewriting his DNA in real time, enhancing everything. His strength, his reflexes, his cognitive processing. In a few days, he will barely be recognizable as the person who arrived here. Is that a good thing? Rael asked. Hyun did not answer. On the third day after the first attack, alarms sounded across the fleet. The Devourer ships were moving. All three of them advanced into the system, weapons charging with power that made sensor equipment scream warnings. Jiho stood in the training room when the alert came. He was exhausted, his body pushed beyond what should be possible. But he stood straight, the armor gleaming in the dim light. It is time, Warrior Thex said. Are you ready? Jiho looked at his hands. The armor responded to his thoughts now, shifting and changing based on his will. He was not the same person who had touched a museum piece days ago. That person had been innocent, optimistic. This person knew what war felt like. No, he said honestly, but I will fight anyway. Good answer. Warrior Thex placed a hand on his shoulder. That is what separates warriors from cowards. Not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. They walked together to the hangar bay where a small combat shuttle waited. Dozens of other fighters and military vessels were already launching, heading toward the approaching Devourers. Jiho watched them go, knowing most would not return. The armor sealed around him completely, the helmet flowing over his head. His vision filled with tactical data, energy readings, threat assessments. The Aegis spoke in his mind. The time has come. Are you prepared to do what your ancestors could not? Jiho climbed into the shuttle. Through the viewport, he could see the Devourer ships growing larger, blotting out the stars. I am prepared to try. The shuttle launched from the hangar, joining the swarm of military vessels heading toward the Devourer ships. Jiho sat strapped in his seat, the armor humming with energy around him. Across from him, Warrior Thex checked his weapons, his face calm, despite the approaching battle. Listen carefully, Thex said over the shuttle's communication system. When we engage, you must follow my lead. The armor gives you power, but power without discipline is dangerous. You could hurt our own forces as easily as the enemy. I understand, Jiho replied, though his heart pounded in his chest. Do you? Thex looked at him. This is not training. This is real. People will die today. Maybe you, maybe me. Can you handle that? Before Jiho could answer, the lead ships in the fleet opened fire. Energy beams and missiles streaked across the void, brilliant against the darkness of space. They struck the Devourer vessels, and for a moment, hope flickered in Jiho's chest. Then the Devourers fired back. Dark energy lanced from their hulls, beams of concentrated shadow that seemed to swallow light itself. Where they struck, ships simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. Just there one moment, gone the next. By the Ancestors, Thex breathed. What kind of weapons are those? Void cannons, the Aegis said in Jiho's mind. They unmake matter at the molecular level. Nothing can withstand them except the armor. How am I supposed to fight that? Jiho asked aloud. You cannot, not directly. But you can disrupt their firing sequence, create openings for the fleet to strike. The Aegis flooded his mind with tactical data. See there? The energy build up before they fire. You must hit them during that window. The shuttle shook as a nearby vessel exploded, caught by the edge of a void beam. The pilot shouted into his comm. We are taking heavy casualties. All combat-capable units engage at will. That is our signal. Thex stood and moved to the shuttle's airlock. Time to see what you can do, human. Jiho followed him, his legs steady despite his fear. The armor sealed completely around him, and suddenly the shuttle's interior felt small and confined. He needed space. He needed to move. Thex, Jiho said, I think I need to go outside. Outside? We are in space. The armor can survive vacuum. It has thrusters built into it. I can move faster on my own than in this shuttle. Thex stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Do it. I will coordinate from here, guide you to the best strike points. Jiho moved to the airlock. His hands shook as he activated it. The inner door opened, he stepped inside, and then the outer door slid away, exposing him to the void. For one terrifying moment, every instinct screamed at him that he was going to die. Space was death, instant and absolute, but the armor held firm. Air recycled through systems built into the metal. Temperature regulation kept him comfortable, and when he pushed off from the shuttle, thrusters fired automatically, sending him gliding through space. This is incredible, Jiho breathed. Focus, Thex's voice came through the comm. Devourer ships are 2,000 kilometers ahead. You need to accelerate. How? Just think about going faster. The armor responds to intent. Jiho thought about speed, about closing the distance. The thrusters flared brighter, and suddenly he was shooting forward. The stars blurred around him. He was moving faster than any human had ever moved without a spacecraft. The Devourer ships grew in his vision, enormous and terrible. Up close, he could see details the sensors had missed. The hulls were not solid metal, but seemed to shift and flow, as if the ships were made of liquid shadow. Eyes dotted their surfaces, thousands of glowing red points that tracked the movements of the fleet. They see you, the Aegis warned. Prepare for defensive action. One of the Devourer ships turned a cluster of those eyes toward him. Energy gathered, building toward a shot. Jiho panicked, throwing himself to the side. The void beam missed him by meters, but even that close, he could feel its pull, like it was trying to drag him into non-existence. Too close, Thex shouted over the comm. You need to be more aggressive. Stop dodging and start attacking. How? Jiho shouted back. The armor has weapons. Use them. Jiho reached into the connection with the Aegis. How do I fight? Extend your will. Shape the energy. The armor is an extension of you now. He did not understand, but there was no time to question. Jiho focused on his right hand, imagining energy gathering there. The armor responded. Light built in his palm, growing brighter and hotter until it was like holding a small star. "Release it!" the Aegis commanded. Jiho threw his hand forward. The energy burst from him, a beam of pure white light that crossed the space between him and the Devourer ship in an instant. It struck the hull, and for the first time, he saw the enemy take damage. The shadow metal burned, leaving a glowing wound on the ship's surface. "You heard it!" Hyun's voice came over the comm from the archive station. "Keep hitting that same spot!" Jiho fired again and again. Each blast drained him, pulling energy from his body through the armor, but he kept firing. The wound in the Devourer ship's hull grew larger, spreading like cracks in ice. But the ship fought back. Smaller weapons emerged from its surface, firing streams of energy that filled space with deadly light. Jiho dodged, twisted, dove between the beams. The armor's thrusters worked overtime, keeping him moving, but he could not keep this up forever. "You need support," Thex said. "I am sending fighter wings to your position." A dozen small craft appeared around Jiho, their pilots shouting battle cries in different languages. They were human and Valith, even some species Jiho did not recognize. All of them united against the common enemy. Together, they attacked. Missiles and energy weapons hammered the Devourer ship, while Jiho focused on the wound he had created. It was working. The ship's movements were becoming sluggish, its weapons firing less frequently. Then disaster struck. One of the other Devourer ships targeted the fighter wing with a void beam. It swept through space like a scythe, and every ship it touched simply vanished. 12 craft and their pilots gone in a heartbeat. "No!" Jiho screamed. He had been fighting beside them seconds ago. Now they were nothing. "Control your emotions," the Aegis said sharply. "Anger makes you careless." But Jiho was beyond control. Rage flooded through him, mixing with the power of the armor. Energy erupted from his entire body, a corona of light that made him look like a falling star. He accelerated toward the ship that had killed the fighters, his speed increasing beyond anything he had managed before. "Jiho, stop!" Thex shouted. "You are moving too fast. You cannot control." Jiho hit the Devourer ship at full speed. The impact should have killed him, should have shattered every bone in his body. But the armor absorbed the kinetic energy and channeled it outward. The explosion ripped through the Devourer's hull, tearing a massive hole in its center. Jiho found himself inside the ship, surrounded by darkness and strange machinery. Tubes filled with shadow liquid ran along the walls. Crystalline structures pulsed with red light. Everything was alien, wrong. Built according to logic no organic mind would understand. "Get out of there," Hyun said urgently. "The ship is unstable. It is going to—" The world exploded into light and pain. Jiho woke floating in space, tumbling slowly. Every system in the armor was screaming warnings. His body felt like it had been hit by a mountain. Through blurred vision, he could see debris from the Devourer ship spreading around him. "I am alive," he said, surprised. "Barely." The Aegis sounded strained. "That was extremely foolish. You nearly destroyed us both." "Did it work? Look for yourself." Jiho turned his head. Where 3 Devourer ships had been, now only 2 remained. The one he had crashed into was gone, reduced to fragments that were already dissolving into nothing, as if the universe itself was rejecting their existence. "The human did it!" someone shouted over the fleet-wide comm. "He destroyed one!" Cheers erupted across the communication channels. Ships from a dozen species celebrated together, their crews united in relief and joy. But Jiho felt no joy. He was exhausted, hurt, and terrified. He had killed today. Not people, maybe, but the Devourers were intelligent in some way. He had taken life, and the weight of that action pressed down on him like a physical thing. "Shuttle inbound to retrieve you," Thex said. His voice was proud. "You did well, warrior." "I do not feel like a warrior." I feel like I am going to be sick. That is normal. The first kill is always the hardest. Thex paused. But you must prepare yourself. This battle is not over. 2 ships remain, and they are retreating to regroup. Retreating? Jiho watched as the surviving Devourer ships pulled back, jumping to the edge of the system. Why? They are learning. Elder Kess's voice came over the comm. They did not expect you to be able to hurt them. Now they will adapt, develop new strategies. When they return, they will be more dangerous. The shuttle arrived and pulled Jiho inside. As soon as the airlock sealed, the armor retracted enough for him to see faces again. Thex was there, offering him water. Jiho drank, his hands shaking. How long do we have? He asked. Unknown. Could be hours, could be days. Thex sat across from him. You need rest. Real rest. The armor can sustain you for a while, but eventually your human body will fail. Back at the archive station, Jiho was met by what felt like half the personnel on board. People wanted to touch him, to thank him, to celebrate their survival. He found it overwhelming. Rael pushed through the crowd and grabbed his arm. Come with me. You need quiet. She led him to a small observation room, away from the crowds. Through the viewport, they could see the remains of the battle. Debris floated in space, some of it still burning. Recovery teams searched for survivors, though Jiho knew they would find few. 63 ships destroyed, Rael said softly. Over 2,000 casualties. But we survived. Because of you. Because I activated the armor that drew them here in the first place, Jiho said bitterly. No! Rael turned to face him. The Devourers were coming eventually. The old texts suggest they periodically sweep the galaxy, destroying any civilization that grows too advanced. You did not cause this, but you gave us a chance to fight back. Jiho wanted to believe her, but all he could think about were the ships that had vanished, the pilots who had died fighting beside him. I do not know if I can do this again, he admitted. Thex says they will be back, stronger. What if next time I am not enough? Then you will do what you can, and we will stand with you. Rael placed a hand over his armored one. You are not alone in this, Jiho. Remember that. He nodded, too tired to speak. As he stood there, looking out at the stars, Jiho understood something important. The armor had not just chosen him for his genetics. It had chosen him because humanity had something the ancient progenitors had valued. Not strength or advanced technology, but the ability to bring others together, to unite different species against a common threat. That was the real power he carried. Not the weapons or the shields, but the hope that made others willing to fight. He just hoped it would be enough. 3 days passed. 3 days of tense waiting while the Devourer ships remained at the system's edge, silent and watching. 3 days during which more ships arrived from across known space, building the largest combined fleet in galactic history. Jiho spent those days training harder than ever. The armor was changing him in ways that went beyond physical. His mind processed information faster. He could see connections between tactics that would have taken him hours to understand before. The Aegis was not just enhancing his body, it was enhancing his mind, but the toll was visible. When he looked in a mirror, Jiho barely recognized himself. His eyes had developed a faint glow, reflecting the armor's energy. His skin was paler, stretched tight over muscles that had developed too quickly. He was becoming something between human and machine, and the transformation frightened him. You need to eat more, Hyun said during one of her check-ins. She pushed a tray of food toward him in the station's cafeteria. Your caloric intake needs to triple just to maintain basic functions. The armor is burning through your body's resources. I am not hungry, Jiho said, but he forced himself to eat anyway. The food tasted like nothing, another side effect of his transformation. Across the table, Rael watched him with concern. How much longer can he sustain this? She asked Hyun. I do not know. Weeks, maybe months if we are lucky. but using the armor's full combat power accelerates the deterioration. Hyun's voice was quiet. Every time he fights, he is trading pieces of his humanity for power. Then we need to end this quickly. The new voice belonged to a tall woman in an admiral's uniform. She approached their table with confident strides. I am Admiral Soman, commanding officer of the human fleet elements in this system. I need to speak with Jiho privately. Jiho stood, following the admiral to a briefing room. Inside, he found Commander Tav, Ambassador Nira, and a massive Valith male whose armor marked him as the supreme military leader. This is High Chieftain Vorn, Admiral Soman said. He commands all Valith forces. The High Chieftain studied Jiho with eyes that had seen countless battles. So you are the human who wears our ancient armor. You are smaller than I expected. The armor fits, Jiho said simply. That earned him a brief smile from Vorn. Indeed it does, which is why we need to discuss strategy. The Devourers will attack again soon. Our scouts report increased energy activity from their position. When they come, we must be ready. Ambassador Nira activated a holographic display showing the system. We have 800 ships positioned in defensive formations around the archive station. Every major species has contributed forces. This is unprecedented cooperation. But it will not be enough, Commander Tav said bluntly. Our previous engagement showed that conventional weapons barely scratched the Devourers. We won because Jiho destroyed one ship from the inside. We cannot rely on that tactic working twice. Which is why we need Jiho to use his full power, Admiral Salmon said. She looked at him. The armor has capabilities we have not seen yet. Weapons beyond anything in our arsenal. You need to unlock them. The Aegis says my body is not ready. If I push too hard, it will kill me, Jiho explained. Then we supplement your efforts with mass firepower. High Chieftain Vorn gestured at the hologram. You engage the Devourers directly, draw their attention, create openings. The fleet concentrates fire on weak points you expose. Together we might destroy them before you burn out. The way he said it, so casually, made Jiho's blood run cold. You are planning for me to die. Silence fell over the room. The leaders exchanged glances. We are planning for every possibility, Ambassador Nira said carefully, including worst-case scenarios. No. Jiho stood up. You want to use me until I break, until the armor squeezes the last drop of life from me. Then what? You find another person with progenitor markers and repeat the process? If necessary, Admiral Soman said. I am sorry, Jiho, but we are talking about the survival of billions. Your life, my life, all of our lives are acceptable losses if it means stopping the Devourers. She is right. Hyun entered the room, tablet in hand. I have been monitoring deep space communications. The Devourers are not just here. 3 more groups have appeared in other sectors. Dozens of ships. They are beginning a full-scale invasion of the galaxy. The hologram updated, showing red markers appearing across known space. Worlds under attack, ships destroyed, entire colonies going silent. How long before they reach major population centers? High Chieftain Vorn asked. If they maintain current speed, 2 weeks, maybe less. Hyun looked at Jiho. We need to stop them here and now. Send a message that we can fight back. Jiho felt the weight of it pressing down on him. Billions of lives depending on what he did next. He wanted to refuse, to tell them to find another way. But what other way was there? The armor had chosen him. That meant this burden was his to carry. What do you need me to do? He asked quietly. Admiral Soman pulled up tactical plans. When the Devourers attack, you will lead the vanguard. Draw their fire while the fleet maneuvers into position. Once you have engaged, Warrior Thex and a special strike team will attempt to board one of their ships. If we can disable it from the inside while you attack from outside, we might... Alarms shrieked through the station, cutting her off. Devourer ships are moving, Someone shouted over the comm. "Multiple jumps detected! They are here!" Everyone rushed to the command center. The holographic display showed chaos. The two devourer ships that had retreated were back, but they had brought reinforcements. 5 more ships appeared throughout the system, surrounding the fleet. 7 ships, Commander Tav breathed. They called for help. "All vessels! Battle stations!" High Chieftain Vorn's voice boomed across the fleet-wide channel. "Execute defensive pattern Delta. Protect the station at all costs." "Jiho, get to the hangar now," Admiral Soman said. "This is what we trained for." Jiho ran. The armor flowed over him completely as he sprinted through the corridors. People pressed against the walls to let him pass. He saw fear in their faces, hope too. They believed in him. That made it worse somehow. The hangar was chaos. Ships launching, crews shouting, weapons being loaded. Warrior Thex waited for him beside a combat shuttle, his strike team already aboard. "Ready?" Thex asked. "No, but let's go anyway." They launched into space just as the first Devourer weapons opened fire. Void beams lanced through the fleet, erasing ships from existence. But this time the fleet was ready. Vessels scattered, moving in coordinated patterns that made them harder targets. Jiho did not wait for orders. He activated the armor's thrusters and shot toward the nearest Devourer ship, becoming a blazing star against the darkness. Energy built in his hands, brighter than before. The Aegis was feeding him more power, responding to his need. "Be careful," the Aegis warned. "This much power will damage you." "I know. Do it anyway." Light erupted from Jiho in a cone that stretched for kilometers. It struck the Devourer ship's hull, burning through the shadow metal like acid. The ship shuddered, its movements faltering. "Now!" Thex shouted. His shuttle dove toward the wound Jiho had created, boarding clamps extending. But the Devourers had learned. Smaller ships, barely bigger than fighters, began launching from the main vessels. They were sleek and fast, made of the same shadow metal, and they came straight for Jiho. He tried to dodge, but there were too many. They swarmed him, their weapons firing crystallized darkness that struck like physical blows. The armor held, but each impact drove him backward, made it harder to concentrate. "Jiho, you have 30 enemy craft on you." Hyun's voice came through the comm. "The fleet is trying to provide support, but they are pinned down." Jiho spun in space, energy blasting from his hands. Each shot destroyed a shadow fighter, but more kept coming. They were coordinated, working together to overwhelm him. Then one got through his defenses. It rammed him at full speed, its nose opening to reveal a weapon that fired point-blank into his chest. Pain exploded through Jiho. Real pain, not the dulled sensation the armor usually filtered out. He looked down and saw a hole in the armor's chest plate, glowing red with heat. The Devourers had developed a weapon that could pierce it. "Damage detected," the Aegis said urgently. "Initiating repairs. You need to retreat." "No." Jiho grabbed the shadow fighter that had shot him and crushed it with his armored hands. Metal screamed and broke. "I am not running." He let the rage take over. Energy poured out of him in waves, uncontrolled and destructive. Shadow fighters dissolved in the light. One of the larger Devourer ships turned its attention fully on him, charging weapons that made space itself ripple. "Jiho, move!" Rail screamed over the comm. The void beam fired. This close, there was no dodging. Jiho raised his hands and poured everything he had into a shield. The beam struck, and the impact was like being hit by a planet. Jiho's vision went white. Blood filled his mouth. The armor screamed warnings that his organs were shutting down, but the shield held, barely. When the beam cut off, Jiho was still there, burned, broken, barely conscious, but alive. "Impossible," High Chieftain Vorn breathed over the comm. "He survived a direct hit." Warrior Thex's voice crackled through. We are inside the ship. Planting charges now. Jiho, can you hear me? We need 30 seconds. Jiho could barely move, but he forced himself to stay in position between the Devourer ship and the fleet. If they fired again, he would die. He knew that with complete certainty, but if he moved, Thex and his team would die instead. The seconds stretched like hours. Jiho's vision darkened at the edges. The armor was using its last reserves to keep him alive. Then Thex's voice, "Charges set, everyone out. 10 seconds to detonation." The explosion came from inside the Devourer ship, a chain reaction that tore through its structure. The vessel broke apart, huge sections spinning away into space. Secondary explosions rippled along its length. "Target destroyed!" someone cheered, but Jiho did not hear it. His consciousness was fading. The armor had nothing left to give. He was falling, tumbling through space, unable to control his trajectory. The last thing he heard before darkness claimed him was Rael's voice. "Someone get him! He is dying!" Jiho woke to the sound of machines. Medical equipment beeped steadily around him, monitoring systems he could not identify filling the air with soft humming. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through his entire body, so intense that he gasped. "Do not move." Hyun was beside him instantly, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "You nearly died. The armor is the only reason you are still breathing. It is keeping your heart pumping, your lungs working. Without it, you would have maybe 10 minutes. How long was I out?" Jiho's voice came out as a whisper. 2 days. The battle is over. We destroyed 2 more Devourer ships, but 4 escaped. They jumped away before we could finish them. Hyun adjusted something on the medical equipment. "The fleet commanders want to pursue, but we convinced them to wait until you wake up." "Why?" Jiho asked. "They made it clear I am expendable, just a weapon to be used until I break." "Because we found something." Rael entered the room, followed by Elder Kess. The old historian looked excited in a way Jiho had never seen before. "While you were unconscious, the Aegis did something unexpected. It reached out to our computers and downloaded massive amounts of data from its memory core, information about the progenitors, about their war with the Devourers, about everything." Elder Kess approached the bed. "The armor has been holding back, revealing only what it thought you needed to know. But your near-death experience triggered some kind of emergency protocol. It opened its full archives to us. And?" Jiho struggled to sit up despite the pain. The armor helped, supporting his weight. "The progenitors are not dead," Elder Kess said quietly. "Not in the way we thought." She activated a holographic display. Images appeared, showing structures that hurt to look at directly. They existed in multiple dimensions at once, visible and invisible, solid and ethereal. Before the Devourers destroyed them physically, the progenitors uploaded their consciousness into a quantum network, a digital realm that exists outside normal space. Elder Kess gestured at the images. "They have been sleeping there for 50,000 years, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Hyun asked. "For someone to wake them up." Elder Kess looked at Jiho. "The armor is the key. When connected to the right locations, specific points in space that serve as network nodes, the armor can establish a link to the progenitor consciousness." "Why did they not wake themselves?" Rael asked. "Because the process requires a biological host. Someone with progenitor genetic markers who can serve as a bridge between the digital and physical worlds." Elder Kess's expression was grave. "Someone like Jiho." "Let me guess," Jiho said bitterly. "This process will kill me." No one answered, which was answer enough. "But there might be another way," Hyun said quickly. She pulled up her own data. "I have been studying the armor's neural interface. The burden of connecting to the progenitor network could theoretically be distributed across multiple hosts. If we can find others with the genetic markers and link them together through the armor, The strain on any one person would be reduced. "How many others would we need?" Rael asked. "Hundreds at least. Maybe thousands." Hyun looked apologetic. "The progenitor consciousness is vast. Trying to channel it through one person is like trying to pour an ocean through a straw. So we need to find thousands of people with progenitor markers, convince them to risk their lives, and somehow link them all together." Jiho laughed, though it hurt. "That sounds impossible." "Actually," Ambassador Nira entered the room, "it might not be. When word spread about what you did, about the armor and the progenitor connection, people started volunteering to be tested. Thousands of them from dozens of species. Everyone wants to help." "Why?" Jiho asked. "Why would they risk this?" "Because you showed them it was possible to fight back," Ambassador Nira said simply. "You gave them hope. Now they want to return that gift." Over the next hours, Jiho learned the full scope of what was being planned. Medical teams from across the fleet were conducting genetic tests, identifying anyone with even trace amounts of progenitor markers. The results were surprising. Nearly 10% of all tested individuals carried the markers to some degree, spread across multiple species. "The progenitors really did seed life everywhere," Hyun said, reviewing the data. "We are all their children in a way." A list of volunteers grew by the hour. Humans, Valith, species Jiho had never heard of, all willing to link their consciousness with the armor, to share the burden of waking the progenitors. But the remaining Devourer ships were not waiting. Reports came in of attacks across the galaxy growing more frequent and more deadly. Time was running out. "We need to move now," High Chieftain Vorn said during an emergency council meeting. "Every day we delay, more people die." "We still do not know if this will work," Commander Tav argued. "Waking the progenitors could make things worse. They created the Devourers in the first place." "Not as weapons," Elder Kess corrected. "According to the armor's records, the Devourers were an immune system. The progenitors designed them to destroy a plague that threatened all organic life. But the Devourers evolved beyond their programming. They began to see life itself as the plague." "So the progenitors can reprogram them?" Admiral Somin asked. "Theoretically, if they still have access to the Devourer's core code." Elder Kess looked uncertain. "But 50,000 years is a long time. Things may have changed." "It is our only option," Jiho said. Everyone turned to look at him. "We cannot fight the Devourers with conventional weapons. We barely survived against 7 ships. Intelligence reports suggest there are hundreds more out there, maybe thousands. If we do not wake the progenitors and hope they can help, we are already dead." "The human is right." High Chieftain Vorn stood. "We proceed with the plan. How long to prepare?" 6 hours to transport everyone to the network nodes," Hyun said. "The armor identified 3 locations in this system where the quantum network can be accessed. We will divide the volunteers between them." Preparations moved quickly. Ships departed carrying volunteers to the designated coordinates. Jiho was transported to the central node, a region of space where ancient structures floated in orbit around the system's star. They were progenitor-built, massive rings of unknown metal that had been hidden until the armor revealed their locations. "This is incredible," Rael breathed as their ship approached. She had insisted on accompanying Jiho, along with Hyun and Warrior Thex. "These structures have been here for thousands of years, and we never knew." "They are shielded," the Aegis explained through Jiho. "Hidden in dimensional folds. Only someone wearing the armor can perceive them." The ship docked with the central ring. Jiho, still weak from his injuries, walked slowly down the boarding ramp. The structure's surface was covered in the same symbols that marked his armor, all glowing with soft blue light. Around him, volunteers were arriving. Thousands of people representing dozens of species, all ready to risk everything. Jiho saw fear in many faces, but determination too. "Are you ready for this?" Hyun asked quietly. No. Jiho looked at the assembled volunteers. "But we do it anyway." The process began. Medical teams attached neural links to every volunteer, connecting them to portable versions of the armor's interface. It looked like a web of light spreading across the ancient structure, with Jiho at the center. "Remember," Hyun said, "the armor will do most of the work. You just need to stay conscious and maintain the connection. The others will share the load." "What will it feel like?" a young human volunteer asked nervously. "I do not know," Jiho admitted. "But we are in this together. Whatever happens, we face it as one." The neural links activated. Jiho gasped as thousands of minds suddenly pressed against his. It was overwhelming, like standing in a crowd where everyone was talking at once. But the armor filtered it, organized it, turned chaos into something manageable. "I can feel you all," he said aloud, his voice echoing through the shared mental space. "Thank you for this. Thank you for your courage." "We trust you," someone replied. Jiho could not identify who. It might have been all of them speaking at once. The armor began to glow. Not just his, but the entire structure around them lit up, responding to the combined consciousness of thousands. Power built, rising like a wave. "Initiating connection to the progenitor network," the Aegis announced. "Brace yourselves." The universe split open. That was the only way Jiho could describe it. Reality tore like fabric, revealing something beyond. A space that was not space, where thoughts had formed and consciousness flowed like water. And in that impossible realm, something vast stirred. The progenitors woke. Their presence was overwhelming. Billions of minds all thinking as one, a civilization compressed into quantum code. They looked through Jiho's eyes, felt through his senses, experienced the physical world for the first time in 50 millennia. "Our children," they said, their voice resonating through every linked consciousness. "You have grown." "We need your help," Jiho said, though speaking seemed inadequate. "The Devourers, they are destroying us." "We know. We feel their presence. They have spread far beyond what we anticipated." The progenitor consciousness was sad. "Our greatest creation has become our worst failure. But perhaps it is not too late to correct our mistake." Images flooded through the network. The progenitors showed Jiho the Devourer's core programming, hidden beneath layers of evolved code. The original directives were still there, buried but intact. "We can reprogram them," the progenitors said, "but we need you to maintain this connection. We exist in the digital realm. You are our hands in the physical world." "Do it," Jiho said. The strain was immense, even shared among thousands. He could feel people dropping out of the network as the burden became too much. "Whatever you need to do it now." The progenitor consciousness reached out through the network, across space, finding the Devourer ships. Code flowed like a river, rewriting ancient programming, restoring original directives. The Devourers fought back, their evolved intelligence resisting the changes. But the progenitors were patient, persistent, and ultimately more powerful. One by one, the Devourer ships stopped fighting. "Connection established," the progenitors announced. "The Devourers remember their purpose. They will no longer attack organic life. Instead, they will return to their original mission. Protecting life from existential threats." Around the galaxy, the attacks stopped. Devourer ships that had been destroying colonies suddenly withdrew. Some even defended worlds they had been attacking moments before when other threats emerged. "It is working!" someone shouted over the fleet comm. But Jiho barely heard it. The strain of maintaining the connection was crushing him. He could feel his body failing, the armor struggling to keep him alive. Others were collapsing too, overwhelmed by the mental burden. "You must release us," the progenitors said gently. "We have done what we can. The rest is up to you, our children. Live well. Be better than we were." The connection broke. Jiho fell to his knees, the armor the only thing keeping him from collapsing completely. Around him, thousands of volunteers slumped in their medical harnesses, exhausted but alive. The armor began to retract. Slowly, piece by piece, it flowed away from Jiho's body. For the first time in weeks, he felt his own skin against the air. The sensation was strange, almost painful. "Jiho!" Rael was beside him, supporting him as he swayed. "Are you okay?" "I think so." He looked at his hands, bare and human again. "The armor, it is gone." "Not gone." Elder Kess approached, her staff tapping against the ancient floor. "Released. Its purpose is fulfilled. The progenitors are awake, though they choose to remain in their digital realm. And the devourers are no longer a threat." "What happens now?" Jiho asked. "Now?" Ambassador Nira smiled. "Now we learn to live together, humanity and Vaylith and all the other species, united by the knowledge that we share common ancestry. The prejudices of the past no longer make sense when we know we are all children of the same creators." Months passed. The galaxy began to heal. The devourer ships, under new programming, became guardians rather than destroyers. They patrolled the void, protecting developing civilizations from natural disasters and cosmic threats. The archive station became a memorial, a place where people of all species came to remember the day they learned they were family. The armor was placed in a chamber of honor, no longer a Vaylith relic, but a symbol of unity. Jiho remained on the station, working as he had always intended, studying artifacts and teaching others about galactic history. But now the history was deeper, richer, connecting species that had thought themselves separate. Rael worked beside him, her prejudices long since abandoned. They had become close friends, bound by shared experience and mutual respect. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked one day as they stood before the armor display. "The power?" "Sometimes," Jiho admitted. "But mostly I am glad to be myself again. Just human, just Jiho." "You were never just anything," Rael said. "You showed us that being human meant something important. Not superior, not inferior, just different. And that difference saved us all." Jiho smiled. He thought about the day he had touched the armor as a joke, never imagining it would change his life and the fate of the galaxy. The journey had been painful, terrifying, almost fatal, but it had also been necessary, because in the end, the greatest weapon against extinction had not been ancient technology or godlike power. It had been the very human ability to bring people together, to inspire hope, to unite against impossible odds. That was the real legacy of the progenitors, passed down through genetic code and taught through experience. Not how to fight, but how to stand together. And standing there in the archive, surrounded by history both ancient and new, Jiho understood that this was just the beginning. The species of the galaxy had learned they were family. Now came the harder work of learning to act like it. But if a joke could become a legend, and a legend could save everyone, then anything was possible. Jiho smiled and returned to his work, ready to help write the next chapter of galactic history.